missions to obtain the objective of the group goals, and they want to enjoy their membership. Ambassadors and members in our country's group made times to help all our members with their challenges with weekly reports and tasks, and were encouraged anyone to seek and clarify by the moderators. I Love Black People members were once again encouraged to stick to the rules. I Love Black People mission and contribution only to fight against racism and xenophobia attacks. In our country's group members who weren't able to attend the Zoom conference session last week, said that they were encouraged to do so this week for further recommendation after sharing the link to highlight the meetings. Reporter Soe Ewusu Ekpe, Patrice Lumumba, ambassador from Ghana. I am because we are.
Thank you, Mr. Joel. I am because we are. Next speaker will be Orani from South Africa. Can you hear me, Orani? Orani, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Thank you. We can hear you. Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, let me read. Let me just find that out. I'm looking for it. Okay. I'm gonna be reading Uganda reports. Reporter Onyango Lewis. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You can speak a bit louder, but we can hear you.
Yeah, reporter Lewis, reporter Onyango Lewis from Uganda. From 21st to the 27th November. Group activities. We have been encouraged to keep recommending Black-owned businesses to the group and recruiting more members to the group. That is family and friends. This has been done by Yvonne and Orani. We have been informed also to keep in touch with other members globally through social media platforms. We are also called to join the meeting every Saturday. Uganda news updates. There has been a threat for Uganda to lose the national airport to Chinese due to outstanding debt. The Yazzie Award nominees were announced that will take place on the 11th of December 2021. The Ugandan National Airport staff was suspended after a man was seen vending a grasshopper in the plane. UPDF soldier arrested after found selling UPDF uniform to unknown people. Uganda's doctor go on a strike due to unfulfilled promises by the government. Reported by Onyango Lewis from Uganda. He had no COVID-19 report.
Thank you, Orani. Thank you very much, sir. I am because we are. Before I welcome Mr. Mapondera, I'd like to ask everybody participating just to write in the comment box, give us your name, your country, are you a member or you're an ambassador, when did you join? So if you can just use the chat for that, that would be great. I'd like to welcome Mr. Mapondera. Mr. Mapondera, are you around? Can you hear me, sir? I think you're on mute. Let me just unmute you. Just hold on, sir. I'm muting you. I think I can hear you. Can you hear me? So? Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think we got it now, yeah?
We got you, sir.
All right. Anyway, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody. It's always a pleasure, and I'm talking to you from Zimbabwe. And it's been a pleasure being home and see all the developments that are taking place, some of which I think reflects on what's going on all over the continent of Africa. This week's Pan-African news, I'm sure you've heard that there's a new variant that is started in South Africa, and there have been, some cases still to be proven in Botswana, but that has resulted in the cancellation of visitors from South Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Swaziland, Mozambique, and Namibia. Well, it's still a very fascinating thing. There's a lot of information that still has to come out, but I'm only surprised by the drastic measures that have been taken to stop people from these 6 countries not to go to the US and the UK. Yeah, so it's an issue that is still being monitored by all the countries in the region. So we're just anxiously awaiting to find out, how real it is, and also, of course, how fast it is spreading and how lethal that new variant is. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, really the topic of my topic this week. Last week I talked about the African youth on the march. There's a lot of stuff that young Africans are doing on the continent because we don't control our own media. Some of these great things, our young people are doing in Africa, we don't even get to hear about them. But when you're on the ground, then you start seeing that, the African youth are not just standing by or sitting around to wait for somebody to come and change their lives. It's a movement that is quite gratifying. But whilst we're on that note, okay, I'm sorry, I don't know how much of my last stuff you missed out. But anyway, let's catch up. We're going to try and attempt to play a short video of the speech that was given by President Uhuru Kenyatta a few days ago, and I'll say something about that.
Okay.
You need each other, and you need to support each other. And as I always state, you are not competitors. And I think the big mistake we have made is by making each other competitors. We are not competing. We have yet to satisfy our respective markets. Our problem is that we are not working closer together to meet the demands that our people have. And as I was telling another gathering, You know, these borders, and I also mentioned to my brother, these borders that you create silos for yourselves amongst, you must always remember, are not your creation. These were creations of people outside of this continent who made these borders not to develop you, but to extract from you. Now that you want to develop yourself, we must start looking at these borders, and we must start removing the barriers that we have put, that have defined us in the past, and now hinder us from being the giant that we should be. I was telling my brother this morning the ridiculousness of our borders, that we in Kenya have a border demarcated with, on one side with Tanzania, where the people who live on the border are the Maasai community. They were a nation once upon a time. Now today, they are Kenyans, they are Tanzanians, and yet they are relatives, but they live on two sides of a border. This is not proper. I was telling him of another example. To our west, Lake Victoria, where again another boundary was drawn between Kenya and Uganda. And where at one particular moment in time, between 2005 and 2007, we had two brothers, same father, same mother. Those who come from polygamous families know what I'm talking about. But this particular one, the same father, same mother. But because their land was stretched across between Kenya and Uganda, one brother inherited land on the Ugandan side, the other brother inherited land on the Kenyan side. And between 2005 and 2007, we had one brother as the vice president of Kenya, and the other brother as the minister in charge of the presidency in Uganda. Now, I don't know whether you can find a much more ridiculous situation to explain the kind of position some of us find ourselves in. So these borders were not made for us. If we are going to become manufacturing giants, we need to do away with these borders. We need to see the African market as one. We need to be able to develop giants like Airbus, that makes components in the United Kingdom, that makes components in France and in other parts of Europe, but has become a global conglomerate. They didn't come together because they loved each other. We all know how they hate each other, we know. Yeah? But they've come together to survive. Africa must come together for us to survive. Survive and indeed prosper. I wish you all the very best. I am very excited that my brother has pushed this agenda of Kenya Airways and South African Airlines, and I am very hopeful that in the very near future, I shall be one of the first customers on a Pan-African flight that is owned by Africa and run by Africans. There's a story that says it's better to own a small piece of a big thing than a big piece of nothing. So I'm looking forward to a small piece in a big Pan-African airline. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's say for those who have ears, they have heard, and those who can see, those who have eyes can see. The most exciting thing with what President Kenyatta was saying is that these are what I call the youth African presidents. They are the people that are coming on board without the legacy of maintaining colonial boundaries. I think President Uhuru says it much clearer. The boundaries were not made by us and for us. They were made by somebody who wanted to come and extract from us. Now, the most significant thing about President Uhuru is that he is a president who can effect change. He's in a position where he can say, I don't want to recognize the boundaries that cut us across, between Kenya and Uganda, or Kenya and Tanzania, or it could be Kenya and another country. If all the African leaders took that attitude, then our problem of uniting Africa will be much easier. But as you know, Africa's unity becomes a threat to those who colonized us. And as I've often said, that it's you, the young people of Africa, being led by the young African presidents that we have, President Uhuru, President Chabera in Malawi, H.U.R in Zambia, the president in Ghana, Kagame in Rwanda. You can feel that all these young presidents, they are putting Africa first beyond the confines of their individual countries. And so to me, this gives us hope. And I hope that all of us can start taking the unification of Africa much more seriously than we have been doing. If you analyze what is currently going on now, is that every major country is busy trying to see how they can attract the African youth soul. Every major country is coming up with a project, with a program where they invite young Africans to come to their, if it is in France, they'll invite all of you to come to France. They'll treat you like royalty and, give you all kinds of funny, fancy things and, have you stay in these posh hotels and so forth. And at the end of the day, what they are trying to do is to pick your mind, pick your brains. Are these African youth going to be our friends in the next generation? Every major country is doing that. When I came here, I've just found out there was a program that a number of African youth just flew to Germany just a few days ago. China is doing the same thing. Even though, if you remember, there was a time when African youth in China were being subjugated to all kinds of violence and so forth. But because it became a national interest for China, China had to climb very, very hard and very fast on their citizens who were harassing Africans. And in no time, within no time, that nonsense stopped. It's because China realizes that if they are not in good books with the young Africans that are coming up, they will be kicked out of Africa. The young Africans are looking, they're studying what's the impact of China on Africa today. The same thing, the UK is doing the same thing. The United States is doing the same thing. I don't say don't participate, but participate knowing what is it you are going there for. If there's something that you are going to learn by participating in it, so that when you come back home, you can now strategize to see how best you can serve your interests. The one major thing that President Obama did during his presidency was to find a way of marshaling as many young people all over the world to come to the US. There's the program they call YALI, where young Africans will go and spend a semester in the USA, and when they come back to Africa, they are linked up with various American corporations, various American funding, and so forth. And the same thing is happening with China. where you've got thousands of young Chinese there in the US right now, going to every university, doing every kind of course you can think of. I've run into some of these young Chinese people, and they say, hey, once I graduate, I'm going back to China. They are very, very clear about that. They know they are going to they're in the United States or they're in Europe or wherever to study and learn how they can best serve the interests of China. They are very clear. But for some of our young people, when they go to Western Europe, they go to the USA and so forth, they are talking more negatively about where they came from, rather than try to put things into perspective, you know, that, hey, I've had the chance to come here, but what role am I going to play for the development of Africa? So I would like, again, to urge each and every one of us to think very hard of what President Uhuru Kenyatta was saying. The borders are useless. Let's do away with it. The creation of the Pan-African Airways, while South Africa and Kenya created that, I'm sure more and more African countries are going to see sense in having this large Pan-African airline, which means it's not going to be a monopoly of one country. It means every country is going to participate in it. It doesn't make any sense to have a little, airline for a small country like, Botswana. It's only 1 million people. But if the Botswana Airlines becomes part of the Pan-African Airlines, then it means the whole 1.4 billion people on the African continent become part of their market. So let's put this into perspective. Our African leaders are taking the lead. Let's study what they're saying and follow suit. So that is my message today, that something is happening with Africa, and the young African presidents that we have now are echoing what Kwame Nkrumah, what Gaddafi was talking about, what Mugabe was talking about, what Marcus Garvey was talking about, what Dubois was talking about. And I'm sure those people are turning in their graves to say, hey, at last, our youth are now understanding what we're talking about. So that's what I have for you today. And I wish you all a happy and a successful weekend, and be productive, be kind to each other, and always know what's happening with your Pan-African colleagues the world over. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mapondera, and welcome to Africa. I am because we are. So next, I will be calling Sister Nana Kua. Can you hear me, Sister Nana?
Okay. Greetings. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am glad to see you all here today. Good morning, good morning. This is, I think, is our 4th week, I believe. Okay, great. And so I have sent the reading assignments for this week, and earlier this morning I sent some additional information. So I hope everyone that's in the WhatsApp class was able to get that. I had been promising for probably some months now to get an updated version of the glycemic index. So I was finally able to find a better one and scan that so that I could upload that. So today we're talking about detoxing and cleansing. So I usually try to follow the handouts, and I think most of us maybe have them, or if not, I'll have them on the screen shortly. But basically, we are talking about what cleansing is, what detoxification is, why we need to do it, the importance of it, some ways in which to do it. And so while I'm pulling that up, and I usually ask, if anyone can give examples of ways to cleanse or detox the body, or whether or not you've ever done a detoxification or a cleanse. If you can maybe share that, even if you would like to share your experience with it, or why you think some people may need to participate in a cleansing, I'd love some feedback with that. And if you'll allow me to share the screen, we'll see if I can smoothly do that. This is usually not a smooth process, but we'll see if I can smoothly share the screen. Who's moderating? Is it a ward today?
No, it's Trésor Junior Kankonda. I think I've allowed you to share your screen.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. You're the new face I see. Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Yes, likewise. Okay, I think. Okay, can you see? Am I sharing? Let's
Yes,
get back to.
we can see. Yes, we can see.
Great. So getting to the top, and let me rotate this around. Okay, so we're talking about cleansing and detoxing. Anyone care to share any information about cleansing, the need to cleanse, whether you've done a cleanse? I don't think I have any responses yet. So basically, let's give a basic definition of what detoxification and cleansing are. Oh, okay, Award is here too. Okay, you're just not moderating. Okay, I see your face too. Okay, great, wonderful. So detoxification, this is basically the process of removing a poisonous or harmful substance from the body, or neutralizing or mitigating its effects, right? Cleansing, a working definition of cleansing, is the process of making something thoroughly clean, ridding the body of unhealthy, unnecessary substances, and cleansing by washing. So very similar. We're basically talking about removing from the body any type of harmful substances, specifically through cleansing, washing, ridding the body of toxins, or at least neutralizing those toxins. So I'll pretty much use these terms, and you'll often hear these terms used interchangeably. So I may say either detox or cleansing, but in this regard, we're talking about cleansing the body of toxins that would cause harm to the body, that would hinder optimal health, okay? So there's definitely a need to detox and cleanse the body. Can you all hear my cat? She is so loud today. I tried shutting the door. You probably can't hear her, but she's getting on my nerves. So there are definitely needs to cleanse the body. Sometimes it's because we know we are not eating a healthy diet, or we know that we're not having proper bowel movements and getting rid of toxins in the body that we've taken in through foods that had no nutritional value. We may know there's a need to cleanse or detox if we had a surgery or procedure and we took in certain medications like the anesthetic medications. We may need to cleanse if we are on a regular prescription medication for a period of time or long-standing periods of time. We may need to cleanse the body if we know we've come into contact with someone else who was ill or had some type of germs or toxins that you may have been exposed to. You may have traveled and perhaps become in contact with some disease-causing microorganisms through food or through environment, or if you went to certain parts out in the land, or maybe perhaps we're walking barefoot in an area with other animals or feces, or in the dirt where there were maybe parasites. There are many different reasons that one might need to do a cleansing or a detoxification, right? So there are many different ways in which to do it. We're going to talk today about some internal methods. We'll talk about some external methods. We'll talk about using herbs and homeopathics to cleanse the body. We'll talk about detox diets, fasting. We'll talk about external methods such as baths or foot baths. We'll talk about massage and skin brushing, all of which cleanse or detox the body. The one thing I'd like to note is that when we are doing a cleansing, know that there may be certain side effects or symptoms of detoxification. This is normal because when the body is cleansing itself and ridding itself from different toxins, certain things occur, such as body odor, bad breath, weakness, fatigue. Some people will experience skin eruptions or rashes. Headaches is a big one, that's a common one. And just general body aches and pain. These are common when you are going through a detoxification or a cleanse. I think the other point worth noting is that there are many ways to cleanse because there are several paths of elimination. So there are 5 paths of elimination. A lot of times we will think of simply moving our bowels or colon cleansing in terms of detoxification. However, there is always a need to cleanse in any of the 5 paths of elimination. There are kidney cleanses, liver cleanses, colon cleanses, skin cleanses, as well as lung cleansing methods. So we know that not only is it important to move the bowels through the colon, we know that we also have to address these other issues. Some people have regular bowel movements, right? But still have a need to cleanse the body. And that may be evident because they have chronic breathing issues or things like asthma, or they get chronic bronchitis or sinus infections and things of that nature. We may know that someone needs to cleanse because they often have skin eruptions, boils, abscesses, different types of skin rashes and breakouts. This is an indication that perhaps a skin cleanse is necessary. We know that people who maybe overindulge in drinking or taking medications, have skin issues also. These could be an indication of needing to do a liver detox. We have people who are maybe hypertensive or have other urinary tract issues, bladder infections, know that they don't drink enough water. These are signs, or they get water retention or edema, right? Where the water is holding in excess fluid. These are indications that perhaps a kidney cleanse is in order, okay? So when we talk about cleansing and detoxifying the body, we're not simply speaking of cleaning the colon or moving the bowels. And of course, we do these cleanse with herbs, with foods, with juicing, with essential oils. There are many different methods in which to do that. So first, we'll talk about some of the internal ways to cleanse or detox the body, okay? So in terms of doing it with food, we know that there are certain foods that are good for a healthy detox. Okay, so this handout here gives us an idea of what foods one might include in doing a detox. This may be when you're doing a elimination diet, where you're doing maybe a raw food cleanse, or you're doing like a vegetarian diet for an X period of time, or you may be doing a juice fast. These are some of the fruits and vegetables listed that you might use. I'm not big on this section here, where we're listing meats as a food for a healthy detox. I would always go towards an alkaline type of diet, where you're doing predominantly fruits and vegetables, maybe some nuts and seeds, but depending on what type of diet you're doing. In these handouts, there are several recipes for smoothies and juices, where we're using different fruits and vegetables and even some herbs. This is what is probably preferential when we're talking about cleansing using foods. We really want to avoid acid forming foods like a few of the meats that they have listed here. We know that there are certain foods that will cleanse the liver specifically. Grapefruits, beets, carrots, apples, cabbage, arugula, broccoli, spinach, herbs like turmeric and garlic, even green tea, cilantro, foods like avocado. We mentioned grapefruits, but also lemon. All of these foods and herbs have an impact on cleansing the liver, right? We know that if we're talking about, and this is just a 3-day liver cleanse, this gives you a sample diet of what to take in upon rising, at breakfast, lunch, dinner, in between meals in terms of morning and afternoon snacks. It gives you liver-friendly foods, and hopefully your copy is better, I don't know, better than what's here on the screen. Glasses. I can't even see it. Let's see if this helps. It helps, but this is a bad copy anyway. But again, this is just something to have as a reference. Oh yeah, this is still just a bad copy. But it's listing things like on the previous handout: lemons, walnuts, beets, grapefruit, things of that nature. Plenty of water where you may add lemon or lime or things of that nature. Here is a liver cleanse juice that is recommended. So this uses beets, carrots, lemon, cucumbers, and ginger. What I would suggest here is to just make a note that if you are watching your weight, you would want to not over consume your root vegetables such as carrots and beets, because these are high glycemic or high calorie starchy foods. They of course have health benefits, but they can also add extra pounds and calories on. So while it'll still cleanse the liver, this is not something you would want to over consume or choose other things to cleanse the liver with. We know that there are many herbs that cleanse the liver, things such as milk thistle, burdock root, yellow dock root, dandelion. There are many herbs that are excellent for cleansing the liver if you are, say, heavier in the middle or watching your weight and don't want to overconsume beets and carrots in this juicing recipe here. Here is another recipe. This one is good for both the liver and the kidneys. This one you can sort of just reference if you feel you want to try this one. It uses cucumbers, celery, parsley, pineapple, lemon, and ginger. And let me minimize this a little bit. So hopefully we can see this. And so turmeric. I mentioned some other herbs. Turmeric is also a wonderful herb that's excellent for the liver. It's also good for the kidneys and just overall immunity, right? We know that it detoxes the body, it boosts immunity, protects liver tissue, purifies the blood, eases symptoms of colds and coughs, improves circulation, improves the skin, and prevents internal blood clotting. So turmeric is excellent. Usually people will add it with ginger. In this regard, it's excellent for inflammation and body pain, such as from arthritis. Adding it also with ginger and black pepper. Turmeric is excellent for aiding in digestion. So excellent choice. And I wanted to just include that handout on turmeric. Moving into internal detox methods for the kidneys. This is yet another recipe that you can use to cleanse the kidneys. This one includes cucumbers, celery, lemon, parsley, and water. Other internal cleansing for the colon. These are some herbs and foods that are good for cleansing the colon. Flax seeds, we know, protect the intestinal flora. This is the good bacteria. Intestinal flora means good bacteria. We know that 50% of the bacteria in the body is housed in the colon. If the colon is clean and is regular and there is not a storing house for toxins that you've not moved out of your system, we know that it creates a healthy environment. If it is constipated, dehydrated, you are not moving your bowels or your colon well, then it's a breeding ground for disease. So you want good, healthy bacteria in the colon, not an unhealthy or unclean colon that will then turn the good bacteria into disease-causing bacteria, right? Flax seeds help to regulate good bowel habits and move those, the waste and toxins out of the colon. We know that alfalfa is a herb that's good for the digestive tract. Spirulina and wheatgrass, these are excellent for getting more oxygen into the body. These are mineral-rich foods that help in the elimination of toxins. Chickweed is an herb that's good for constipation, and it has a healing effect on the colon. Chickweed also is a refrigerant herb, so it kind of helps cool the body down in general, and also can kind of calm or cool inflammation. So whether it's inflammation in the colon or whether inflammation in different parts of the body. Fennel seeds, these relieve lower abdominal pain and enhances digestion, also reduces gas. Fennel seeds are used a lot in Indian cuisine. So this is excellent. They usually will use it in the foods or even after meals to aid in digestion, right? Aloe vera, which grows on a lot of the planet. So aloe is pretty easily accessible. This heals and soothes the intestinal lining. So it's very healing and cooling to the entire gastrointestinal tract, just as healing and soothing as it is topically when we've burned or cut ourselves. Peppermint, this alleviates the intestines, so this can help aid in digestion of your foods. Peppermint is an excellent tea to drink after dinner because it helps decrease the time that food remains in the stomach, so it aids in the digestive process so that it moves on from the stomach to the small intestines to the large intestines. Mango, this helps to relieve constipation, so it has a laxative effect. Probiotic yogurt, this is good for that intestinal flora that we mentioned earlier, the good bacteria. This helps regulate your bowels and helps restore it, making sure that there is good, healthy bacteria in the colon. Fermented foods, these are things like kefir and unpasteurized foods. We talked about this, was that last week maybe, or the week before when we talked about superfoods, where they have multiple benefits and high nutrient value. So this is yet listed here again because it helps cleanse the colon. Organic foods or organic fruits are always good for the colon, and we're more so focusing on high fiber foods, fruits that have fiber. So we're talking about your apples, we're talking about your grapefruit, these foods that are lower glycemic foods, not foods that are really sweet, not the fruits that are really starchy and sweet and full of calories, the ones that are higher in fiber. These help cleanse the colon. And then this chart, so this is just a chart when we're talking about the colon, what we want to always observe. And she's shaking her head like, oh my gosh, are we looking at poop? This is important because we all have bowel movements, or we should, and we should all have bowel movements every day, at least twice a day. And we have to make sure that it is the right consistency. So the idea, of course, is to avoid really hard lumps of waste that are hard to pass from the body. And we want to avoid really watery, runny, liquidy bowel movements, right? We know that these two extremes are very, very bad. And we do not want these types of bowel movements. Ideally, we want 5, even 4, right? Soft pieces that are easily passed. And not that we are feeling the consistency, but in terms of making note of how easily it passes from the body and whether it can kind of easily break up as it comes out of the body or hits the water or what have you in the toilet. So you really want to make note of the condition, the look of your stool or your bowel movements. So let me talk a little bit about some external methods, and I think I skipped that handout earlier. So we've talked about the colon, we've talked about the liver, we've talked about the kidneys. We have not so much talked about the lungs or the skin. So let's go back to external methods of cleansing, right? So we know that there are external ways to detox. These are going to be the methods that are excellent for your skin. If we're talking about different baths, whether we're doing a herbal bath, whether we're doing an essential oil bath, whether we're doing a salt bath, these can all be really healing to the skin. And of course the body, because of course when we soak our bodies, depending on what we've added to it, we are relieving tension, we're relieving stress, pain, inflammation, things of that nature. So baths can be really healing, not only to the skin, but also to the body overall. We know that massage will also help cleanse or detox the body. Even though it's a topical external cleansing method, we know that it will have impact throughout the body, especially lymphatic massages, acupressure massage, or shiatsu massage, where different pressure points, or even reflexology, which I think we spoke about last week. But we know that these types of massages or physical manipulation of different parts of the body will relieve stress and tension, will increase oxygen and circulation in the body, relieve pain and all of those things. But we also know that it will enhance immunity and increase the efficacy of everything, every organ and every body system. Skin brushing is specifically a cleansing routine that we will use when it is time to do a fast or a cleanse or a detox. This directly impacts the skin because we are brushing the skin, but this also increases our immunity, and it also will get rid of dead skin cells that are on the body and prepare the body to function in an optimal way. Skin brushing is usually where you are using a dry bristle brush and you are brushing the skin. So this is similar to a brush that would be used in the shower. However, you do not use it in the shower and you do not get it wet, but you use a bristle brush and you brush up the skin or up the body on the skin in smooth, long strokes in order to stimulate the lymphatic system and cleanse the skin. Another way of detoxing the colon through external means are things such as enemas and colon hydrotherapy, where specifically water is entered into the colon in order to wash away or cleanse any waste or toxins that you have not done through your regular daily bowel movements. Foot detox or ionic detox, where there's a module that's put in the water that ionizes the water and brings about the environment to detox the body through the feet, or whether you're talking about a foot detox, again, using herbs, salts, or essential oils. These are some of the external ways to detox the body. And when we're talking about the lungs, right? When we are talking about detoxifying the lungs, it's really important to do two things. There are herbs that are excellent for the lungs. These are herbs that typically we would use, say when we are congested, or when we have asthma or bronchitis, or things of that nature that help improve our breathing, right? So these are herbs like mullein, or horehound, or wild cherry bark, or elderberry, and I'm sure others that I'm not thinking of right now, right? But there are many different herbs, or homeopathics like antimonium tart. These are herbs and homeopathic remedies that heal the lungs, that help detox the lungs. But we also know that one really good way of cleansing the lungs is through conscious breathing. These are breathing exercises where we are consciously breathing and we are exercising the lung muscle, and we are breathing in and exhaling different carbons and such that are toxic to our bodies. So conscious breathing can be an excellent way to cleanse or detox the lungs. And there are many different cleansing breath exercises to do. One of my favorites is fire breaths. And even with that, there are two different ways to do the fire breaths. So some people will do in and out the nose. And I am congested because my German kids have given me the cold. So breathing exercise demonstrations today are not going to be the best for me. However, this is something that I should be doing because this will help clear the congestion. Then you have fire breaths where you inhale in the nose and then exhale out the mouth. Okay. These are really healing to the lungs. Again, if you have a cold, the flu, any kind of breathing conditions or disorders that affect the lungs, conscious breathing can really increase the oxygen that is circulated throughout the body and help really strengthen the lungs. There are many others as well. There are slow, deep breathing exercises where you're simply taking deep breaths, inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, and exhaling for 4 counts. So it would be okay. So you have to make sure that you're inhaling, taking your time, holding, and then exhaling for as long as each of the other 2 steps. This is something that maybe you would do as opposed to the fire breaths that are a little more aggressive, but all of them induce relaxation, okay? All of them allow for the body to increase circulation and improve your lung function, but all can also be really helpful for relieving stress and helping you sleep, especially if you've had a difficult day, you're trying to relax. Even the fire breaths that seem really aggressive, right? They still, once you relax and you've done, say, a set of 20 or 25, when you sit still and you just allow your body to relax, it gives you increased relaxation because you've done something with all that excess energy and anxiety from, you know, the responsibilities of the day, right? So don't discount the more aggressive fire breaths. If you need to relax, they can be helpful as well. But if you just simply want to relax and you want to do more slow, deeper, long breaths, like the slow, deep breathing exercises, you can do that either way. But I do, encourage you to do conscious breathing. Thank God we don't have to think about breathing. It's one of those things that's both voluntary and involuntary, right? But when we consciously do breath work, it strengthens the lungs. So that's one excellent way to strengthen the lungs. So we've talked about the 5 paths of elimination, how to cleanse them with food, how to cleanse them with different external methods. So let's now move to let's take note. So we know that we've discussed many different ways, and I kind of ran right through it. I put this note page here so that you could perhaps take note of some methods that you might want to employ, right? When doing a cleanse or a detox in either of these areas. It may be something that you perhaps want to look more into and get more information on. Either way, this serves as sort of a recap for you. And let's see if we have any questions or comments. Okay. Yes. So, and in terms of anyone that wants to do a detox or a cleanse, it's really a matter of where you want to start, what type of detox you want to do. And yes, if you simply fast and drink water, fine. I usually am not a supporter of just what we call a nothing fast or a water fast. If so, I think it's best to do and there's 2 different master cleanses that we as naturopaths have talked about, or I wouldn't say we as naturopaths, I should say those of us that are in the holistic healing field, right? So some people refer to the master cleanser as that lemon, cayenne, and they used to use maple syrup, but I think agave nectar is a better choice these days, right? Because maple syrup is a high glycemic food, right? But then previous to that, a master cleanse or a master fast, people would add chlorophyll to the water, right? So if you're doing a water fast, I suggest, or if I were doing a water fast, I would put chlorophyll into the water so that you are getting minerals. You will cut down on some of the side effects from the water fasting, right? Because there are definitely probably every bit of the symptoms of detoxification that we talked about earlier, and even more that you may experience in doing a water fast. But if it's just a day or 2 or 3, perhaps it's easy, it's doable. But consider a cleansing where you are doing a juice fast, or a cleansing where you're doing only live or raw foods. Meaning, so you're going to end up only doing fruits and vegetables, even if some are used or processed in a dehydrator, or you've marinated some, or even really heated them in like a food processor. And of course, it's no higher than say 100 or 115 degrees. But fasts like that, I think, are safer unless you are really under the direction or guidance of a healthcare professional that knows fasting, water fasting specifically, but any kind of cleanse. It also can be that you still eat food, but you may be doing a regimen of liver cleansing herbs or colon cleansing herbs. You may do a type of detox where you eliminate certain foods. Sometimes people refer to it as elimination diet, where sometimes people use it to figure out what food allergies or sensitivities they have, but you can also use it to simply eliminate foods that you know you overconsume and are not of benefit for you. So you may do a detox because you are, and similar to what people do, say for Lent, right? So you are fasting from soda or fried food or from meat or things of that nature. You may do a cleanse where you are getting a series of colon hydrotherapy sessions, or where you're going and getting lymphatic massages and reflexology and things that are going to, you know, help increase your circulation and increase your chi or your energy flow. So there's all kinds of ways to do it. Yeah, some of the handouts are not legible. I do apologize. Yes, and if you don't have the handouts, or if you need the handouts, I'll post my email and I'll send them to you. And all of this stuff, I'm sure you can find online, especially the things that maybe are not very legible. You can perhaps go back and do another search of it and maybe get a clearer copy. I have to say some of these handouts are things that I've had for 20, 25 years. And like what I did with the glycemic index that we're going to get to next, I had a chart that I just cannot put my hands on right now. So I had found another one. And so even though it was pretty legible, I didn't find it very accurate and not as comprehensive as the original chart I had. So I did go and took the time to do that last week and found another chart, or more updated chart, that hopefully is a little more legible and I think more accurate. So same with some of these other handouts. You may simply need to say, oh, okay, this handout that talked about these liver cleansing smoothies, I'll go back and I'll Google liver cleansing smoothies. But this is to give you an idea of what's out there in terms of how to cleanse and detox the body. So yes, I'm sure all of these things you can find online. Slowly repeat the breathing exercises, the conscious. Well, so there are several. Now, if you're gonna turn your cameras on and do it with me, I will gladly redo it, right? Because this is something I do in my workshops, and you know, before the world changed and we were sitting face to face, this was very much a part of what I would do. I do retreats, and you know, we have workshops on breathing, and we do different conscious breathing. But I'm not mad at this, because hey, if we were only doing face to face, I couldn't see most of you, right, that are not here, because everybody is not here, right? But I will do that. So get yourselves ready. So if you want to do, or you want me to do the breathing exercises, you will have to participate. Okay, get your mind set on that for a second. Let me go through the rest of these comments. Information, thank you. Okay. So let me type in my email. It's nanaakua1@gmail.com. So yes, if you do not have the handouts, just send me a quick email and ask for the handouts. And what I usually do is just send you the entire 4-week session, okay? And so if you sit in on the Saturday calls, whichever week we're on, you'll already have it, right? If you join one of the WhatsApp groups, you'll get it, and I just break it up each day throughout the week. Okay. I like that Nia cut her camera on. She ready. Now the rest of y'all are not ready. Who asked me to do the thank you, Nia. So listen, who asked me to redo the exercises? Because I don't think it was Nia. Who asked me, and then y'all ain't got your camera on? Let me go back to the let me go back to the Claudia. Y'all know I'm looking at all these little boxes. See, I see Claudia, your camera not on, but you want me to redo the, got your hand up and everything, but your camera is not on. Fine. I can't make you take your bonnet off your head or whatever. Look, I got my hair done. It's all curly. I'm showing myself. Okay, they still not cut their camera on. Okay, fine. But we still gonna do it. We'll still do it. So, and I just told you I had a cold. So, but this is good for me, right? So, and again, some people have books out with different breathing exercises. So there are many. I really, and I think with all of these things, it's all about what resonates with you. So these two that I mentioned, these are just the two over the years that I prefer. Like, I really love the fire breaths. There's a healer here in the States. She's in New York. Queen of Fool has been around for many years, and she does a version of the fire breaths, the one that's in and out the nose, right? And then there is another book by a lady who does this 3-day energy fast, right? She does and talks about the one where you inhale in the nose and exhale out the mouth. So even with the same type of, and then there's a fire breath, or maybe they call it lion breath, right? Where you inhale, and when you exhale, you kind of roar, like you really make noise as you exhale. So it's sort of like, ah, right? So they're all kinds, right? We're not gonna do that one. But know that there are many different conscious breathing exercises. So we're going to do, and usually, like, so Queen of Four, you know, she goes hard. She's, you know, very skilled at this. She says do sets of 100, right? We're not gonna do sets of 100, because you know what happened if you right off the bat do sets of 100 of a fire breath? You'll be laid over like this, or you'll be like, "Ooh, I'm dizzy," right? Because it really needs something, you really need to practice. This is something you really need to work yourself up to, right? And so usually, see, Nia Good, she is using good posture. She done stood up. So this is excellent. You either, if you're remaining seated, you want to really be upright, where your feet are touching the ground and your torso is upright, right? And you put yourself in a good position to breathe, right? To allow for the proper, you know, flow of things. Standing is probably optimal, but since most of us maybe haven't positioned our computers or phones to do that, if you're seated, as upright as you can be is what you want. So let's do just 10 sets of the fire breaths in and out the nose, okay? And I always say 1, 2, breathe, okay? So again, we're doing, oh no, that's my favorite one. Let's do the in and out the nose. Okay, we got it. Okay, 1, 2, breathe. And so you really just want to remain still and in place, because you've really gotten things going, and you could feel a little lightheaded, right? So you then want to just regulate your breathing to slow, normal breathing, some slow, deep breaths. Exhale slowly. And you want to give yourself a couple of minutes to recover. And the key is to repeat this. Again, you work your abilities up to do sets of 5, or then you increase your reps to 25 and you do sets of 4, right? But you get to the point where you can do more, right? So that's that one example. And if you participated, and if you're just sort of sitting and allowing yourself to feel all the sensations, right, that are going through your body, you can see how this is healing to your body. Some people may feel tingling. Some people may sort of just feel like, oh, okay, I kind of feel things, but you're gonna feel that flow of energy in your body, right? Can you relate to what I'm saying? So listen, I feed off of people. So I have to say, this is a challenge. This whole little thing to me, I say it often, right? But this is a this is a challenge, sitting in front of this computer looking at these little blocks, right? but I appreciate any feedback that you give me. So now let's do the other fire breaths, right? This is my favorite. This is in the nose, out the mouth. I find it easier. I think this is better for, say, a newcomer or a beginner, right? Because we're maybe more used to this type of breathing. So it's, okay. You ready? So this is fire breaths, in the nose, out the mouth. Ready, set, breathe. And just allow yourself to relax. Go back to your normal breathing. Taking slow, deep breaths. Enjoying all the sensations you're feeling in your body. Right? How y'all feel? Is it weird? Somebody got to give me some comments. So listen, I used to do drug treatment, right? And I used to be in the prison and I would teach, right? Folk that were addicted to substances, these breathing exercises. And of course they looked at me like I was crazy, right? They were like, what? What's this got to do with drug treatment? And you want us to do what? However, it became sort of a favorite for the group, right? Because if you don't know, so when people have used substances, right, when they recover, a lot of them go to nicotine, right, the legal drug, right, and they smoke. But what that does is then it creates a lot of mucus, right, and it was allowing them to break up all of this mucus that they would have, right, and they felt better, and they were like, oh wow, I like them breathing exercises, or they would struggle with it for a while because they had to bring up all of this phlegm and all this mucus, right? So these can be really, really helpful for many different reasons and for many different groups of folks. So whether you're doing a cleanse to clear your lungs directly or intentionally, or whether you're doing a cleanse to cleanse your lungs because you had other issues, it can be helpful. But what do you think? Okay, great. Nicole says she enjoyed them, right? And did y'all participate? Listen, when I breathe, you set the whole thing. You got to close your eyes, you got to really be into it. But that is the fire breaths, the long, deep breaths, right? Inhaling, and this is even harder, right? Because most of us, we talk, we move around, we're doing different things. It's easier to do fire breaths, either one. Slow, deep breaths, especially holding them for counts of 4, especially the holding one, and then the exhaling one can be more of a challenge. So to inhale. To exhale for as long as you inhale is always harder because it's easy to be like, right? You have to press out. As long as you inhale, you make sure that you push all of that breath out with your exhale, right? So I'll just do one example of that one again. So we're going to inhale, hold, and then release. So yes, this is fire. Yes, this is fire. So these are just some examples of conscious breathing, conscious breath work. And there are people, breathologists that exist, people who study this. There's a mama, her name is Ayo Handy. She's in DC, if you're here in the United States. I already mentioned Queen Afua, but there are people that this is what they do. They lead workshops. I simply incorporate them in things that I'm doing. If I'm doing a wellness weekend and we're doing other, things, this is something I incorporate. But there are folks who have studied, breath work and how to do these different types of things so if you want to look more into it, feel free. If you know other people who do these types of things, who are holistic healers, I'm still creating our directory, right? For I Love Black People, right? We're creating a global directory. So all of you that are on, you maybe have just in your mind that I just sit in on the calls and I get the information on the Pan-Africanism, and I hear the reports from different countries, and you're doing, the health class. If there is someone local to where you are, and you all know I always encourage you to find your local herbalists and healers, your traditionalists, send me that information also, because we don't just exist in a vacuum. Those of us here in the US are not the only people who have information and who know things. If where you are, right, that most of us can't reach or don't know of, if you know healers, send me their information to go in our directory. So the Global Green Book we are putting together, please send me the information. So yes, at least once a day. If we're doing really good, so I've done different types of trainings, priesthood trainings, different things where I've incorporated doing meditation, doing breathing exercises once, twice a day. Sometimes with life, we get out of that type of thing. But yes, if you can incorporate this once a day, twice a day, along with your praying, along with cleansing or fasting or other things you're doing to improve your health, definitely that's going to be excellent. So someone asks if once a day is good. Yes, at least once a day. Or even if you find that you've skipped some days, thinking about it regularly and doing it at some level of routine, even if you don't do it every day, but you say, hey, I did my breathing 3 times this week. Your lungs are going to be that much stronger and that much healthier for it. Okay. So thank you all for indulging me with the breathing exercises. I did not plan to do that, but even the person that didn't show, they think, oh, that's Claudia. Oh, there you go. See, I got on you pretty bad because you had not cut your camera on. I missed that he joined us. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for the question. And I'm glad I got to kind of lead some demonstrations. Y'all see he on there? I talked about him at first, right? Didn't I? So he cut his camera on. So yes, thank you all for indulging me with that. And hopefully, yes, you'll use it and you will detox your lungs on a daily basis, okay? So the last part, I added this handout on the glycemic index. The last part of the lecture, and I know I only have about 8 minutes, 7 minutes or what have you, where we talk about the chart on hypertension. This is definitely not something I really need to go over per se. I want you to just have this as a reference so that you will know what, let's skip down to that one because then we're going to go to the glycemic index. And this handout on the glycemic index, again, this is not my favorite one, so I have added another one. But this chart I found very useful. And again, you can go to the website that's here at the corner if you need a clearer version of it. I like it because it gives you the different stages, mild, moderate, and severe, and very severe of high blood pressure. It tells you what the readings are, what to look for. And I like along the sides here, if you see where they give you tips on how to regulate your blood pressure and things to consider, what foods to avoid, what vitamins and herbs and minerals and things to include. So we know that high salt foods are a no-no. We know that even medium salt foods, I like that they listed high and medium, right? So medium to high salt foods, we want to avoid those. Hydrogenated oils, we want to avoid those. I think I've mentioned hydrogenated oils before, but these are oils that are not cold pressed or expeller pressed. Hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated means they've done a heating process. Usually this is done to extend the shelf life of the oils. And most oils are hydrogenated, but they've added, right, hydrogen and probably other things in a heating process to increase the life of it. But natural oils shouldn't last forever. These are not things that we should take in. And I don't know what keeps popping up on my screen. So we know that we want cold pressed or expeller pressed oils. Yes, foods, when you're talking about hypertension, you want foods that are high in different vitamins and minerals, things like apples, avocados, bananas, broccoli, fish, grapes, oats. We know that we need minerals like potassium, magnesium, calcium. We know that we need certain vitamins that are listed here. Herbs like hawthorn and garlic and juniper berry and all types of things that are good at regulating blood pressure. So this chart I found helpful for that purpose. Know what your blood pressure is, keep a check on it, and make sure that you are in the range of normal ideally, but even if you stay below that borderline, you can usually use dietary changes to assist you with that. But definitely if you stay at that borderline and you need to seek assistance from a medical professional to make sure that you're not in a dangerous level with your high blood pressure so that you're not at risk for stroke and other, heart or cardiovascular issues, you really want to keep track of that. And the glycemic index. So let me pull this up. I think I have it already. Me quickly trying to do something just may backfire on me, but let me see if I can. Did I pull it up already? I didn't. I didn't. So, I know what. I had pulled it up. I had pulled it up to send to the group, but I don't think I had left it up on my screen to share. Let's see if we can do that. So the glycemic index, the reason that this is important and the reason I'm trying to share this is for folk who, here it is, great. So folks who are diabetic or pre-diabetic, oh no, I'm still sharing the other thing. Wait a minute. I thought that okay. Yeah, that's a bust. Y'all know I'm not good with this. If you want the updated glycemic index, let me know. You can email me. If you're in the WhatsApp group, you already got that, right? So, okay, so there it is. Why is it not showing? Oh, do you see it now? Do you see glycemic index 60 plus foods?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Okay, I know I'm out of time. I got one more minute. But this chart is a better indication of what foods have what glycemic index number assigned to it. Any food that is over 70 is too high. This is for anyone to follow. It doesn't have to be someone who is diabetic or pre-diabetic. It definitely the standard American diet. And I'll even venture to say the standard African diet. We eat too many starches, right? They're very starchy, root, vegetable-based foods. This is very important to take note of. We have to include more vegetables, more fruits, even if it's more proteins. But the high starch content really overworks our pancreas and creates different blood sugar imbalances and other conditions like diabetes and even pancreatitis and other pancreas disorders. So this chart gives a good idea of the different types of foods that contain starch. It gives you an idea of which numbers are assigned. So these are foods that have a glycemic index. reading at all, because not all foods have starch, right? But of the foods that contain a starch content, these types of charts give you an idea of what foods are too high, so you need to avoid, or which ones are fine. So where I stopped at was, you see watermelon. Watermelon is great for you, it's good for the kidneys, but it's a high glycemic food. So it's not something that everybody always should consume, right? So you have to be careful, and you have to know that it's a high starch, high calorie food. And so you have to be conscious if that's something you're looking out for. Okay, so I will stop my share. If you had questions that I didn't get to, if you're in the WhatsApp group, definitely. What? Oh, okay. I don't know what's going on with somebody stating some crazy stuff in the comments. So it sounds like this person who kept trying to control my screen is talking about they hate Black people. Well, okay, you need to be somewhere else, buddy. So thank you all for joining us today. I put my email. If you have questions or need the handouts, let me know. And as always, I bid you good health and peace.
Thank you, Sister Nana. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So up next, we are going to Dr. Wright for the Pan-African Organizing class. Dr. Wright, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm here.
Welcome.
So have you cleared the troll from here before I begin? Because the stuff I'm gonna say probably will be a problem with the troll in our group. Have you got it? Because Nana Akua said that there. Nana Akua said there was somebody saying something in the chat. So I just want to make sure that
I'm trying to find them. Actually, I saw that as well. I'm trying to find them.
Allergy or something is the name. If you can't see, if you can find it,
I'll find it.
Okay.
Okay, because even though we're on, a couple of platforms, our conversation for this is sort of exclusive. Okay, good. Make sure, because this is for
I'm on it.
Us African people who know we are Black. Okay, so welcome everyone. You'll see me momentarily. Just getting my technical stuff together for a second. Welcome. We've got an intense, hold on, okay. I had to take the alarm off. We have an intense session because, as you all see, our readings for this week are hefty. So I'm hoping that we actually get through all of it. And in the time that we have, and I don't go too far over this week. I try to respect time, everyone's time, but we do have a lot to cover. This week, you had several readings, and I'm gonna list them. We won't get through all of them. There'll be some we'll just segue into next week. And there's another film that I'm going to share in the group. It's actually called Cuba: An African Odyssey. And it covers a lot of what we, some of the proponents of Pan-Africanism that we're going to cover in here today as well. Starting with a meal called Cabral. I actually might even just share a portion of it before I get into the lecture so that we can get context. So last week we addressed the two evidentiary chapters of our readings on, hi, how are you, Sarum? We addressed the two evidentiary chapters, which arms you in essence with concrete examples of Pan-Africanism. When we have moments where the conversation comes up regarding concrete examples of Pan-Africanism, right? And you should hang on to what we did last week, because this is a constant dilemma. Very often people will say, what does Pan-Africanism produce for us? It hasn't produced anything for us. Those are two concrete examples that you can reference where Pan-Africanism in a tangible way changed policy as it relates to our freedom to move around the world, particularly through the United States and the rest of the world. But then also in relationship to Liberia. And, just to recap, like when you watch a show, they always recap. So I'm just recapping, to make the connection between last week and this week. That scenario with Liberia, once again, we have to be critical and understand it wasn't the best deal, but it was the deal that it is the factual and historical deal that preserves Liberia in that moment in time when imperialists on the ground attempt to seize and annex the territory. Very important case, right? Because otherwise Liberia would not have survived, okay? So not the best deal going, but the only deal going, and one that was hard earned and acquired by none other than Booker T. Washington, a very unlikely individual, but then again, really not an unlikely individual, right? Because he did it. So he was a master at concealing his true agenda and identity, so to speak, from Europeans. So he's able to broker and be the key negotiator and broker of that deal through to resolution, right? That being said, those are two concrete examples of Pan-Africanism as it relates not just to individual people, Black people, African people, but to the collective, right? The African exclusion measure, just to really recap, there is no Marcus Garvey coming into the United States shortly after Washington's death, okay, in 1916. If Booker T. Washington, who is the key negotiator and key figure in debunking the African exclusion measure, if he has the attitude like, so what? We're in America. We don't let nobody else in. We don't want nobody else to get ahead, or we don't want, because certainly the idea is that people are coming for education. People are coming for employment. That is the context by which the Caribbean, African population of the Caribbean are contributing to the Panama Canal. They are employed on an American engineering project, paid US wages, but then told by the US government and its officials and politicians, don't think about immigrating here. We want your labor, we don't want you. It's Washington who says, you're not going to impose this unfair and racist measure, okay? Because we are here, right? So you see an African person advocating for African people internally. And yes, for those of you who are in the diaspora, that is the reason why every African after 1915 is able to enter the United States, because of little old Booker T. Washington and his Tuskegee machine that was able to effectively challenge. And last week we read more of that case than I usually read with any other class, going into sort of the details of how the polling happened in the Congress and how the words of Booker T. Washington his words were found on the floor of the House through a congressman from New York, challenging the unfair and racist measure and going into the detail in terms of all the nations that directly were impacted: Puerto Rico, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Panama itself, all of those nations that had Black and African populations that would have been maligned, right, and classified not just as Black and African, because it was, exclude anyone of the Black or African race, but putting us all in the same category as criminals and undesirables attempting to enter the United States. Okay, criminalizing us based on genealogy. I often say that in the United States, in North America, Blackness is criminalized. In South and Central and Latin America, Blackness is a sin. And I'll get into that later on. They both are problematic and bad. Okay, but that is what you see here. You see it in the official legislative record, putting Blackness in the same category as criminals and undesirable. So we don't have to theorize about whether or not the criminalization of African people and Black people is a real thing in the United States. We know, at least going back to 1915, it is on record to do so, right? And so this is what Booker T. Washington challenged effectively, not single-handedly, but in terms of leadership, because he is the person who propelled the whole thing. It is his Tuskegee machine, his secret network of power brokers that execute this. And so you don't have a Marcus Garvey in the United States coming the very next year, months later, without this measure. You don't have, I was looking at, as you guys probably have heard, one of Malcolm X, Malik El-Shabazz daughter, one of his daughters passed away. And, but I was looking at a picture that someone posted of his mother, whose ancestry was from the Caribbean. You don't have our beloved Malcolm being born in the United States because his mother and her ancestry are not here. You don't have, I said this last week, you don't have, you know, the famous or the infamous, depending on who you are, Barack Obama, born in the United States. If this measure passes, and you don't have the many people who come from the African continent to study at Tuskegee and then return to share the model without this measure being, you know, effectively destroyed and debunked by Washington in the House of Representatives either. So I can go on and on and on and on and on, right? In terms of the demographic in the African community in the United States, had this measure passed. So there you have it, two concrete examples where we have literal advocacy by Africans within the United States on behalf of Africans internationally. And it's conclusively, if we qualify it, examples of Pan-Africanism, how we want to, in theory and practice, move with regard to each other. So moving on, we had a lot of reading this week. I will go through it. And for those who are not in our group, on our WhatsApp group, I'm going to actually share the screen so that everybody can see the actual readings that we are up to this week. So this week, our readings address the measurable expressions of organized Pan-Africanism and the question of identity. Okay, the list of readings for this week are the following. So we have the Marcus Garvey, and that was pasted backwards, but okay. So we have Marcus Garvey, the philosophy, an excerpt only from the Philosophies and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. So you should have read that. It wasn't too long. And I have a specific critique. I'm going to start with him just so I can make sure that I address this one particular point as it relates to Marcus Garvey and Liberia, because we can't just adopt everything that is from our historical past. We need to sort of qualify and refine it. And there is just a particular issue or point I want to make with regard to what Garvey says about colonization, okay, of Liberia and the African population. No. And that's a big no. And I think I addressed it when we talked about Liberia. Okay, the posture of Americo-Liberians in Liberia was very problematic. Okay, so we have to be careful about that, right? Because that is one of the things that we address in the context of this organization, this xenophobic attitude that we can have amongst Africans. So it's not enough that we eradicate racism, okay? We have internally, we have to have a dialogue around our ethnic conflict and hence xenophobia amongst African people and Black people, right? That is an important aspect of our ideological development. Otherwise, we're not ideologically developed. We can only just say, okay, those guys, you know, we want to protect ourselves from that. And we don't understand what the positive transformation should be internally for us, right? So put a little mark by Marcus Garvey, because I'm going to get into that. I'll be the first document, but the others are W.E.B. Du Bois or Dubois, as some maybe you'll say. With the concept of race, it's an excerpt also. Then I give you a blip of the Pan-African Congress resolution, which is connected to Dubois, because Dubois is the person who initiates the congresses. So if you think back to 2 sessions ago, when we covered the definition and the first historical event, organized event for Pan-Africanism, we have Dubois as the youngest person in attendance at the first Pan-African conference. He is the sole survivor, and he ends up being the initiator of the Pan-African Congresses, right? Very important point. You can't come through this course or any other seminar on Pan-Africanism and not know the differences between the conference of 1900, which initiated it all, and the Congress. Okay, Congresses from 1919 onward to 1945. So he is the sole survivor. He carries the torch, and he is, you know, sort of in the leadership of setting up this think tank, which will be the platform for African leadership to come together and conclusively understand and declare total independence from imperialism on the African continent, which ultimately is where we're going and looking at and studying as the highest expression of Pan-Africanism, okay? So then, of course, naturally, so we look at those, or we look at the 2 most important organized efforts historically. There will be others, as you'll see there. The Pan-African Congress resolutions, which are very important, right? It's like what comes of the conference. 1919, the first of them, and 1945 in Manchester, which is the most significant of them, right? And then naturally, out of that 1945, actually, that 1945 Congress and beyond comes a assertion by African leadership. Notably, you will have Nkrumah. So sort of our readings for this week are in a logical order. Nkrumah, the need for a union government in Africa. And that is a statement on his part as the leadership of the first independent African nation from colonialism at that time, right? Ghana securing its independence in 1957, and hopefully the rest, and they do, many will follow, right? We don't talk about it enough, but we will have 17 African nations take back their liberation, take back their independence in 2 years. Forget the Arab Spring. That's never been seen before. 17 nations on the African continent, 1962, 63, wrestle away their liberation, their independence from imperialist nations. Very important point. Why? Because the very reason why European nations are involved and have their hands in Africa is to exploit the people, the labor, and the resources, right? True independence by Africans stands to destabilize Europeans in Europe. So the fact that this happened so quickly and aggressively, and listen, we could always have more. We want more, right? We want more. And it is continuous, right? Because there will be many others afterwards that will wrestle away their independence from imperialism. But those would be 2 years where there is a rush, a spring, a jump of, you know, liberation struggles. And the consciousness for that comes from this very setting of the Pan-African Congresses. We'll see that in detail in the 1945 Manchester Congress. Okay, so then we have the Declaration and Resolution of the first Conference of Independent African States. That is an organized effort around Pan-Africanism. And then, of course, we have the statement of Haile Selassie to the League of Nations in 1958. And I will break that down. I don't know that we're going to get to that simply because of the fact, just time, right? I want to leave a little time for Q&A. And then, of course, finally, we're going to end with, we're going to begin and end with none other than 2 readings from Amilcar Cabral, which are from his text, right? Return to the source. I love Amilcar Cabral as a theorist, as a political leader, as an organizer, just because it's timeless what he's saying. Every time we're on this is our 12th cycle of this course, and a lot of time, most of you who are on the continent want to have some dialogue around ethnic challenges and how that relates to our unity as we try to manifest it as Pan-Africanism. And I think Amilcar Cabral gives the most instructive, directive prescription for how to view ourselves in the context of struggle in terms of our history and our culture, and in terms of how to manage our personal conflicts, meaning how to manage our conflicts and our age-old conflicts. See, we African people, we are the oldest friends, we are the oldest enemies, we're the oldest brothers, we're the oldest sisters, we're the oldest aunties, uncles, mothers, fathers, we're the oldest, right? We've been living next to and with each other the longest, right? Because we are the humans, we are humanity. Long before this recent thing of white supremacy and culture, which is only 400 to 500 years old, right? We have been here for 200,000 to 300,000 years. And the first place we exist is on the African continent. We've been next to each other forever, okay? As soon as you have more than one person, you have the potential for conflict. So we've done everything together, right? Now we have a common issue in the world, which is white supremacy and culture, which manifests itself as racism. And we have to strategize about how to put aside some of the issues that are as old as time immemorial, and struggle against this common issue, right? Which does decimate us. So it's not just a common issue that makes us feel uncomfortable. It is a common issue that challenges our health, our well-being, right? Our life chances in every area of life. It attacks us, right? So Amilcar Cabral, he talks about the people of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde coming together, particularly the people of Guinea-Bissau, in the struggle you're going to see. He critiques this in how they struggle to end imperialism in their own country, meaning he precisely pinpoints the fact that the struggle that we all have to engage in against white supremacy and culture manifesting as colonialism and imperialism in that country at that time, the struggle against this is going to prepare us to be unified. It's going to put us through a process by where people who are very different and have always been different, right, are going to come together, right? His exact words are that the struggle will prepare the people for the victory, to function as a unified nation. When prior to that, there were no colonial borders, right? These things are imposed on us. You know, we can see all over the African continent, and we can see it everywhere else in the world, how African people who were different are forced together through these circumstances called white supremacy and culture, colonialism and imperialism, and how it functions. I see somebody like go like this. I don't know if you're doing that, like to raise your hand or whatever. Okay, no, we're gonna do Q&A. So hold on to it or write it down or put it in the chat, because I scroll back up in the chat and I address it. So Amilcar Cabral, I love him as a theorist because he was, besides a organizer of the people, a people's movement, he is the ultimate theoretician, political theoretician, and revolutionary, because he hits on those nuances that some of the others don't hit on enough or adequately, right? So he is not wholesale this Marxist-Leninist who just takes the Eastern Bloc's position, right? He is one of the ones who says, hey, no. We've got to invoke culture. We've got to invoke history in our struggle. We can't be like, see, when the Eastern Europeans, Marx and Lenin, are talking about their struggles in Europe, they're all Europeans. Okay, they have difference in their cultures, true enough. Okay, however, there is not the same kind of attack on them in their context. For us, the difference is that our colonization process stripped us of our culture, stripped us of our history, tried to erase our historical memory. So in the process of liberating ourselves, we've got to reclaim those things. It can't just be a material analysis, which is what Marxist and Leninist ideology is about. And don't get me wrong, I come from a political organization, which is Marx and Leninist leanings, you know, where Nkrumah is our ideological father and all of that. However, I'm still critical of that position wholesale because of the fact that for African people, culture and history are relevant. Right? History tells us who we are and where we are on our journey, but culture is also indicative of who we are, right? And it's expressed by how we live. If someone comes and imposes their culture on you and you can no longer live the way you used to live, then that's a problem. And part of reclaiming your freedom is reclaiming that culture, right? If someone erases your historical memory, now you don't know your father and your father's father and your father's father and their remedies in addressing problems, then you're discombobulated. Those things have to be part of our liberatory process, period. Okay? The thing I always say about Marxist and Leninist ideology is that this is the bottom line. When Marx wrote and Lenin wrote what they wrote, they weren't thinking about Africans. They weren't thinking about African people. They were not talking about us. So that's all we need to say about them. You take what applies, the rest, you throw that away because it doesn't apply to us. All right. We can't just have a material analysis. And for those who might be lost in what I'm saying, Marx and Leninists, in terms of approaching or taking one's liberation and struggling in revolutionary movements, they invoke a material analysis only. And I'm saying Amilcar Cabral, and even I am asserting that for our liberatory process, we've got to reclaim culture. We've got to reclaim history, right? We cannot just have a material analysis, right? So Amilcar Cabral brings that home and addresses some of what many of you are very interested in understanding regarding ethnic differences, right? Because we know that part of what the struggle is, and the largest part of what the struggle is our internal unity. Our unity will protect us. Many people think fighting these other guys is our top priority. No, our struggle is the internal struggle, right? What our internal struggle will produce is unity. What will unity do from us? Protect us. This is part of what the work in I Love Black People is all about, right? We are organized, we're unified, we are leveraging technology to share information that's beneficial to us to do what ultimately? Protect ourselves, right? So let me get into the particulars. I'm gonna get off the camera and I'm gonna share the first document for those of you who are not in the WhatsApp group. I'm going to share the first document. It's not so pretty, but it comes from, it's an older text. It comes from the Philosophy of and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. And I'm just going to hit on some key points, scroll through it. Most of it is in line with what we were talking about, but there is room for some critical analysis where I critique it. And that is with regard to the issue of Garvey's use of the word colonizing. Okay, we don't want to do that. And colonizing of Liberia, that was a huge mistake and very problematic in terms of the Americo-Liberian population, or the African population settled in Liberia at a certain time. So 1 second. I'm reading some of the comments, but I can't get caught up with the comments. Let me get you guys to the document, okay? And so we can share that, so everyone can sort of read along. I'm not going to read to you too much. I'm just going to hit on those certain points like I usually do. And then we get into the other documents. And I'm going to try to, this week, and I sort of warned folks that this week would be a little hefty in terms of the materials, our readings, but it's what we're here to do. So I'm about to share my screen. I'm on the device, so you're gonna see my screen momentarily. Okay, so excuse that. Okay, so here we are. Marcus Garvey, Philosophy and Opinions, 1887-1940, Jamaica. Let me just say this, Marcus Garvey, and I've highlighted some of this for you guys, but Marcus Garvey comes to the United States in March of 1916. The first place he goes is Tuskegee, the institution, and that was an invitation extended to him by none other than who we were reading about, Booker T. Washington. Anybody who, studies Garvey knows this, that theoretically, as I covered in the chapter that we read on Pan-Africanism, Garvey is inspired by Washington, and this is according to Garvey. This is not my version of history, okay? This is what Garvey writes himself. Garvey is inspired by Washington after his reading of Up From Slavery, okay? He said he is inspired by Washington, and he is informed of his doom to be a race leader. because unfortunately Garvey considered, and he knew that sometimes this particular work, while very rewarding, you know, you might not be anybody's favorite, okay? But he realizes his doom to be a race leader, to you know, beat the drum for African people. And then he goes on to model the Universal Negro Improvement Association after the Tuskegee model. How does he know about the Tuskegee model? He knows about the Tuskegee model because there is a conference in 1912 called the International Conference on the Negro. If you need to see whatever evidence of it in our chapter on Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanist, which we read here week 1, the last pictures in the chapter shows the image of people coming out of a building, and is a period image, an original image of the International Conference on the Negro held at Tuskegee in 1912, which brought anyone connected to and or involved with Africa to Tuskegee, so that the institution itself could share the best practices as it existed in its 44 industries. So they opened up their 44 industries, whether it's wagon making, wheel making, printing press, all of that, open up its 44 industries to share with the African world so that they could take back best practices to the African world. Okay. You understand Washington's, this particular philosophy is independence through industry, to own and operate your own industries, right? So that you are not eternally indebted to the Western world. So Garvey finds out about that conference because he does not attend, but 8 educators from Jamaica attend. And they bring the word back to him about Tuskegee, and he, in essence, gets to see the structure of Tuskegee, how it is a sustainable model for African people. And he duplicates that. That's why there is a business model for the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and Garvey seeks to establish multiple industries, right? But unfortunately, he really only masters one industry, and that is printing, the printing press. However, it's significant because with that mastery of the printing press, he produces what? The Negro World. The Negro World is his paper through which he would organize the African world, from the Americas to the continent of Africa. And every port and dock where there were African people, you had the UNIA's paper, the Negro World, present there. It is how African people in Jamaica learn of the coronation of Haile Selassie. And while many in Jamaica rejected Marcus Garvey, they would subscribe to this idea of a redeemer that would bring redemption to African people from the East. And so they would see the coronation of Haile Selassie. How? On TV? On the internet? No. They would see the coronation of Haile Selassie on the cover of the Negro World. Okay? How does the African in Jamaica know what the African in Ethiopia is doing at that time? The only way to know is through the Negro World, Garvey's paper. And so it is in every dock and port, and he single-handedly is able to organize the African world in a way it never was before or would be afterwards. In other words, let me say it a different way, as Sinclair says, the African world would never be organized as Africans prior to this advent of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and never since this organization existed. 47 chapters of the Universal Negro Improvement Association in the United States and the Americas, and numerous throughout the world. Malcolm X, El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz, his father was a pastor and an organizer in the Universal Negro Improvement Association. His mother was a writer for the Negro world. This is how Malcolm X's parents meet. No unusual meeting, no ordinary couple. Okay, we can't get two African people to be on the same page now and build families accordingly, right? Because their family was in line with the values and principles of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. So their family unit, first organization, is like no other, okay? No ordinary meeting between an African man and woman were that union between Malcolm X's parents. That being said, that's how they get together, and their family was ran accordingly until the father is assassinated by the Klan. Okay. So the Negro world is modeled after the Tuskegee model. And then, of course, Washington and Garvey have a personal relationship. It's documented. If you read chapter 2, book 2, Washington, Pan-Africanist, you see the details of their relationship in that chapter, the correspondence between them. Garvey referring to Booker T. Washington, saying that he is his humble and faithful servant, and referring to him as essentially his ideological father of sorts, for his production and building of Tuskegee and his vision for connecting Africa and Tuskegee, which is not publicly known at that moment in time. But of course, having the contact with Tuskegee, Garvey knows this, and they have a relationship in which Washington invites Garvey into the United States. Before Garvey comes, Washington, from Jamaica, Washington eliminates the African exclusion measure, which would have locked Garvey out of the United States. So that's a little context for Garvey. But here you see him in Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. He addresses the issue of Africans for Africa for Africans. Okay. I'll just read briefly, and I'm just gonna hit on the highlighted points. Okay. All right. So for 5 years, the Universal Negro Improvement Association has been advocating the cause of Africa for the Africans. That is, the Negro peoples of the world should concentrate upon the object of building up for themselves a great nation in Africa. When we started our propaganda towards this end, several of the so-called intellectual Negroes who have been bamboozled, who have been bamboozling the race for over a half a century, said that we were crazy, that the Negro peoples of the Western world were not interested in so-called Pan-African, his Pan-African Congress, that American Negroes could not live in Africa because the climate was too hot. All kinds of arguments have been adduced by these Negro intellectuals against the colonization of Africa by the Black race. Some said that the Black man would ultimately work out his existence alongside the white man. He's talking about some of what Washington originally said, alongside the white man, alongside of the white man in countries founded and established by the latter. Therefore, it was not necessary for Negroes to seek an independent nationality of their own. The old time stories of African fever, African bad climate, African mosquitoes, African savages have been repeated by these brainless intellectuals of ours as a scare against our people in America and the West Indies, taking a kindly interest in the new program of building a racial empire of our own in our motherland. Now that years have rolled by and the Universal Negro Improvement Association has made the circuit of the world with its propaganda, we find eminent statesmen and leaders of the white race coming out boldly advocating the cause of colonizing Africa with the Negroes of the Western world. A year ago, Senator McCollum of the Mississippi legislature introduced a resolution in the House for the purpose of petitioning the Congress of the United States of America and the president to use their good influence in securing from the allies sufficient territory in Africa in liquidation of the war debt, which territory should be used for establishing an independent nation for American Negroes. About the same time, Senator France of Maryland gave expression to a similar desire in the Senate of the United States during a speech on the soldiers' bonus. He said, "We owe a big debt to Africa, and one which we have too long ignored. I need not enlarge upon our peculiar interest in the obligation to the people of Africa. Thousands of Americans have for years been contributing to missionary work, which has been carried out by the noblemen and women who have been sent out in the field by the churches of America." So he's essentially talking about the fact that this expatriation and recolonization and expatriation and resettling of the African in Africa has been criticized by African people who are of the intellectual brand. And I'll just be transparent about it. He is alluding to W.E.B. Du Bois. Okay. He's talking about Du Bois, who he is officially by this time in somewhat of a conflict with, an inherited conflict from the Washington Du Bois pseudo conflict. Okay. The irony of this scenario is that Du Bois would ultimately end up in Africa. Okay. Let's be very clear about that. Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois died in Africa. He would not die in America. So Garvey is in this piece criticizing and this notion to discourage people from identifying and looking to Africa from the diaspora until whites begin to talk about it. Okay, that is his criticism. Until whites begin to say, well, yeah, Africa, we owe them a great debt. We need to look at that again. Until they do that, it is not popular amongst African people, intellectuals in particular, is what Garvey's criticism is. So he goes on to talk about the sort of the factions amongst African people. And he lands on this, and I'm not going to go real deep on this point. I'm just the highlighted points I'm just going to touch on because I want to move to the next document. I just want to make some connections here. So he goes on to say, everybody knows that there is absolutely no difference between the native African and the American and West Indian Negroes, in that we are descendants from one common family stock. Pan-Africanist thought automatically. It is only a matter of accident that we have been divided and kept apart for over 300 years. But it is felt that when the time has come for us to get back together, we shall do so in the spirit of brotherly love. And any Negro who expects that he will be assisted here, there, or anywhere by the Universal Negro Improvement Association to exercise a haughty superiority over the fellows of his own race makes a tremendous mistake. He's talking about classism amongst African people, and we know that it's more open on the continent, but it exists in the diaspora in a pronounced way as well. Such men have better remain where they are and not attempt to become in any way interested in the higher development of Africa. We have the same and similar issue today, okay? This, we could also say, bleeds into the concept of xenophobia on the continent, right? Africans from particular regions coming to other places on the African continent and having and being met with xenophobic attitudes. The Negro has had enough of the vaunted practice of race superiority as inflicted upon him by others. Therefore, he is not prepared to tolerate a similar assumption on the part of his own people. In America and the West Indies, we have Negroes who believe themselves so much above their fellows as to cause them to think that any readjustment in the affairs of the race should be placed in their hands for them to exercise a kind of an autocratic and despotic control, as others have done to us for centuries. So he's making an internal criticism, right, about African people everywhere we are, that we cannot afford to have the biases and attitudes that other people have against us. Sound familiar? But this is over 100, well, this is close to 100 years ago that he's writing this, 1920s. Okay, so we are on, as I said in early lectures, we are on a continuum, right? He's waging a struggle that we're waging right now. Certainly there are people who believe that look like us, but who are not committed to the struggle of African people, committed to the struggle of Black people, are not interested in protecting Black people, and are in essence tools of a machine and structure, right? Again, I say it would be advisable for such Negroes to take their hands and minds off the now popular idea of colonizing Africa in the interest of the Negro race, because they're being identified with this new program will not in any way help us, because of the existing feeling among Negroes everywhere not to tolerate the infliction of race or class superiority upon them, as is the desire of the self-appointed and self-created race leadership that we have been having for the last 50 years. Okay. You know, so he's addressing something that is been with us, and it's almost like a sickness amongst us, where we need to identify or create a hierarchy internally amongst African people, okay, that is only to the benefit of other people. Sort of like what I was already addressing in terms of Emile Capral's approach, knowing that we already have internal issues, and addressing the fact that our internal issues cannot be exploited to the benefit of imperialists, okay? So people who are champions of white supremacy and culture, we cannot allow them to exploit our internal conflict. So Garvey is struggling with all of these things way back then, right? And we are on a continuous march against those very things, xenophobia and racism, okay? Africa shall develop an aristocracy of its own, but it shall be based upon service and loyalty to race. And I would say culture. Let all Negroes work towards that end. In other words, what we are seeking to develop is a people who are loyal in service to African peoples. It's what I Love Black People is all about, right? Through the work that we do, we hope to insulate, and we will insulate and protect African people, Black people. Garvey is saying the same thing. We are not going to be, we're not going to have a hierarchy, internal hierarchy based on color, based on class, based on superficial things, even based on education, based on these pseudo nationalities, right? Because we know the colonizer imposing these nationalities on us. We are going to build an aristocracy based on service and loyalty to African and Black people, okay? So he is addressing this desire to get with Western colonizers as it becomes popular to pay attention to Africa once more. And he's saying, hey, no. We're not, our encounter with Africa can't be to assert this hierarchy that already exists, right? Our interest in Africa is because it is our ancestral home. It is our base, right? It is the seed of our liberation. It is the seed of our power. And so he's challenging that once again. And yes, for those of you who understand the period, he's making a direct reference in many instances to Dubois, okay? He is making a direct reference to Dubois and his position, because at the time, Dubois is not developed in the way that one would foresee his eventual repatriation to the African continent. That's not foreseen, okay, at that moment. Dubois is still involved in a number of things, and it's not going back to Africa, okay, at that moment in time. Let me go to the next document, because I know we don't have much time and I want to do Q&A, so we are going to be a little bit over if you don't mind, but I'm the last one, so everybody knows I'm last, so I try to bring up the end and a little bit more, so just bear with me, okay? 1 second. So the next document that I'm going to share is Dubois, and I'm gonna just breeze through this, okay? Because I might even just skip right to the end of it, just to exhibit. You know some critical things already about Dubois, so I'm not going to belabor the discussion about him. But Dubois, born in 1868, never in enslavement. Everybody, when they think of Pan-Africanism, they think about Dubois, but we should know that that's not necessarily where he started out conceptually, okay? And you can see here in this particular piece, he challenges and delves into the concept of race, and he lays out his genealogy, okay? What you should understand is that Dubois' major contribution to the world, the African world, because really, to be quite frank with you, that's all that matters to us. But his major contribution to the African world is the founding of the Pan-African Congresses. Remember I said he's the sole survivor from the first Pan-African Conference, and he ultimately goes on in 1919. What I mean by the sole survivor, he's the only one who was alive from the 1900 conference in 1919. He's the only one living. He was the youngest at that conference to begin with, but he is the only one living by 1919. And he has the consciousness, thank God and our ancestors, to initiate the Pan-African Congresses in spite of everything that's above this particular part of this particular piece. He talks to you all about his ancestry of another kind, which I personally find ironic. Okay, I don't identify with that, meaning that for Africans in the diaspora who know that they've had their blood mingled with Europeans, those of us who are not delusional know that it is through crimes committed through us, crimes committed against us, that we have had our blood mingled with other people. You understand? It's rape. It's domination. That's how you, rape is about power. I can dominate you. I can violate your body, and you can't do anything about it. And I can commit atrocities against you, and there's nothing you can do about it, to the point where you can bear children as a result of these atrocities I commit against you, and I can own and sell your children. Okay. So there's no glory in that. There is nothing to celebrate in that, except for if you are able, after all of that, to recapture and take back your African mind, right? If you can take back your African mind after going through all of that, then you have the victory. However, the reality is that in terms of the exploitation of the human and the Black body, that's nothing to celebrate, right? And certainly nothing to recall in a in terms of reminiscing about one's genealogy, right? We give them death. We don't speak their names. We don't call their names. We don't call the names of rapists, thieves, and murderers. Okay, so I'm always perplexed about that aspect of Dubois, but in spite of that, he gives us a great gift in terms of collective organization and the First Pan-African Congress and the following ones, right? He is one of the key initiators of that, and that becomes the think tank for, you know, African liberation on the continent of Africa. It would be the space, the Congresses would be the space through which the OAU is born, right? The Organization of African Unity. And it becomes the space through which African leadership say we have to have total independence and liberation. So that is Du Bois' greatest contribution in my eyes. Okay, but I scrolled through all of what he wrote there because he gives you a rundown about all his genealogy and all of that. Okay, and he is a complex individual, but he settles on this. At the same time, I was firm in asserting that these Negroes were Americans. For that reason, and on the basis of my great-grandfather's revolutionary record, I was accepted as a member of the Massachusetts Society of the Sons of American Revolution. Problematic. In 1908. When, however, the notice of this election reached the headquarters in Washington and was emphasized by my requesting a national certificate, the secretary, H.U.R. Clark of the Smithsonian Institution, wrote to Massachusetts and demanded proof of marriage of the ancestors of Tom Bookhart and record of birth of the son. He knew, of course, that the birth record of a stolen African slave could not possibly be produced. My membership was therefore suspended. County Cullen sings, "What is Africa to me? Copper sun or scarlet sea, jungle star or jungle track, strong bronze men or regal black woman of whose loins I sprang, where the birds of Eden sang." 3 centuries removed from the scenes his father loved, spicy grove, cinnamon tree. What is Africa to me? What is Africa to me? Once I should have answered the question simply, I should have said fatherland, or perhaps better motherland, because I was born in a century when the walls of race were clear and straight, when the world consisted of mutually exclusive races, and even though the edges might be blurred, there was no question of exact definition and understanding of the meaning of the word. One of the first pamphlets that I wrote in 1897 was on the conservation of races, wherein I set down as the first article of a proposed racial creed. We believe that the Negro people as a race have a contribution to make to civilization and humanity, which no other race can make. So he settles upon this understanding that he is in fact a child of Africa, even with all of his issues and contradictions. And you know, Du Bois is one of the individuals who suffers with double consciousness, right? I have to say, for those of you who are not in the Americas, all of us don't suffer from that. I don't suffer from that. I've never, you know, and I know a lot of intellectuals do. Okay, their first world is the Western world, the white world in front of their eyes, and we are on the margins of that, looking out. And no, I for me and for people like me, my first world is an African world. I can't even perceive of anything else. So Du Bois, and that has to come from, that comes from his ideation, his set of life experiences. You have to understand he lost his parents early in life. His mother, by the time he was 12, his father left the family early on in his infancy, 2-3 years old. And so he is sort of a charge. He has some Black influences, but he is a sort of a charge to a white community. So he is primarily in a white context, right? So this is why he has that dilemma. His ideation is the cause of it. Ideation meaning the set of experiences that go into the formation of who he is. On the other hand, that's not my first, I didn't even know that. Put it this way, I grew up in a household, not to make myself a subject, but I, like many of us, grew up in a household where we have to be told about other people, right? So anybody, in my opinion, who did anything good in my eyes, in my childhood, was like me, right? Naturally was like me, which meant was an African person. I did not, anyway, I learned. So we have to understand, I'm just giving myself an example. We have to understand that Du Bois, in spite of this ideation that put primacy on white culture and people initially, he still finds his way back to Africa and African people, and rightfully so. He lives like 90 years. He almost lives to 100 years old. But he finds his way sooner than later back to Africa and understanding the primacy of Africa and African people in all of our realities. And so from that vantage point, he understands that in spite of what's happening in the diaspora, he is facing Africa, hence the founding of the first Pan-African Congresses in 1919, which grows to be so much more than him. It is the body that, like I said, think tank that produces the OAU and then the African Union. And with that, if now that you understand the history, it gives us a little more oomph in our desire to challenge the African Union when it is not acting as it should, right? True to its history, true to its early predilections and purpose and mission, right? Which is to bring about the unity of Africa, right? So when Haiti is not allowed to be a member state and just an observer state, but Israel is allowed to be a member state in the African Union, we qualify that, right? This is where we take theory and we start to challenge practice, right? We qualify that. We said, no, that's not acceptable, because the initial vision and mission, which is true to the history of the African Union, as far as the bodies that produce it ultimately go back, the vision and mission is to bring about unity of African people, Pan-Africanism. And Israel, as far as I know, is not a part of that. You can observe, but you can't be, you cannot be a member before, example, Haiti, the first independent African nation in the Western Hemisphere. Are you serious? Right? So this is where we qualify things, right? We start to point out contradictions, right? And we qualify it in relationship to this history and its original mission. So I'm gonna stop there, even though I didn't get to know. I'm gonna post the film, Cuba and African Odyssey, which will give you some more context of all the proponents, Amilcar Cabral and Nkrumah and others, because I don't want to go over too far. I'm like 10 minutes over right now. And I'm going to go to Q&A. And what I'll do is I'll dialogue a little bit about the other documents so that when we get to next week, we'll hit those really quick. We'll kind of synthesize the film. You'll see the proponents that I talk about here in these readings in action, right? And of course, we will address the film. Cuban African Odyssey begins with addressing the most important assassination of the 20th century, which is the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, okay? And how that impacts the African world, how we get caught up in other people's issues, right? The Cold War. And if you remember, I dropped an article, and I'm gonna, and somebody else also put it in there too, because I watch and look at what you all post in the group. Somebody, as well as myself, began to have a little bit of a conversation about what's happening in the DRC, how they have officially began to put Western nations, Switzerland being one of them, on notice about the resources and the mining and the processing of cobalt and cobalt in particular. Well, this issue comes back up with the issue of Patrice Lumumba and how that impacts the world, and why the Congo in particular holds a strategic place and value in the world, right down to the technology we're using to do this. So that is addressed in there, and many of the other proponents of Pan-Africanism will be addressed in this film. Cuban Africanity, and I'll post it by Monday night, but shortly, pretty much after this, between the finish of this and Monday night when we get our readings. So I'm going to stop there and go to Q&A. I'm sort of cutting myself off the knees because I could really go on this issue, but I want to respect time, and I don't want to be, you know, far beyond the time that we have. I call myself Black or African American. Right. I mean, you can call yourself Black or African American. I mean, but it's like Dr. Clark said, John Henry Clark said, land, culture, people. So there is no Black land. We have constructed in America in particular, and others are catching on, a constituted Black culture, right? But that came about as a positive intellectual transformation amongst African people in America, and known as the Black Power movement, right? But it's a characteristic, right? Blackness. And we got to be careful because the racial thing is not real, right? We started out in this course with looking at the journey of man of genetic odyssey. So we are all on the same level. Race is not real. Culture is very real. Race is, you can't take somebody's blood and know their race, because the reality is that we all have one common origin, right? Race is a social construct based on physiological or physical appearance. And we all know that African people, we can produce people who look any kind of way. Blonde hair, blue eyes, pale skin, we can produce that. We do produce that all the time. It's not an issue for us. So when you talk about the construct of race is based solely on physical appearance. And then in the context of slavery, the condition, physical appearance and the condition of the mother. So if the mother was enslaved, then the child is a slave. And that was to insulate and protect enslavers from the children they produced by raping African women, right? So, right. We are Africans born in America, right? It's just like Malcolm said, just because you put kittens in an oven doesn't make them biscuits, okay? So I was answering you, Nicole, but so I'm scrolling backwards, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Got luck, I think, Todd. Yes. Thank you for joining us. My cat wants to join. can you get Solomon? Can you get the document? Are you in the group? Are you in the group? So it's Philosophies and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. You can get it. I don't know if I can send it out via email or whatever. I'll try, but I never promised to do that because there's so many people on here, to be honest. All right. But if you're not officially in I Love Black People, please join so you can join the class and you get all the documents, a lot of documents, and and you get them for free when you join them. Okay. But if the administrators can just, I don't know if I can like capture that. Let me see if I can capture that. Okay. All right. I captured that. So maybe I can send it to you. Because once this closes, I don't have any, Yes, our blood was mingled on the continent as well. We know that when the Portuguese arrived, they actually engaged a lot of African women along the coast. And so you have many groups of people who are, who have those encounters along the coast of Africa and become a class of people in some instances. Of course, all over. Listen, part of domination is about raping the people, right? And rape is not about sex or love. Rape is about power. Okay. I think these other questions. Somebody asked me about the COVID vaccine, but I don't know what. That seems like that was probably for Nana Kua. Right, and so we're having a new colonization. I'm looking at your comment, Solomon. Yeah, so right, we have to say no colonization, but it's very insidious and it manifests in a lot of ways. I think that that's a very helpful move on the part of DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo, to say, no, there won't be any external refining, or you will not be taking raw resources out of the Congo any longer to, put it through a process and send it back to us. Okay, that ends. And if you understand, and we're going to talk a lot about this in the next session, the Congo and the 9 surrounding countries holds the bulk of the world's resources. So they hold a significant strategic value in the world, unparalleled. Somebody I know who doesn't know so much about Africa had said to me, oh, the world's resources, they're on the equator. Yeah, they're on the equator, with a concentration in Africa and the 9 surrounding countries. Okay, so bottom line, that's just what it is. So, there's how we feel, and then there's facts. So I think that's a good start, but there's other things. I just saw in, Uganda, the Ugandan president just gave the Chinese the airport or something to that effect. And that's alarming because the relationship to China, and relationship China has to Africa is deeply problematic. Okay, it signals something that is deeply problematic. Listen, we have 3 things to our advantage. Youngest population on Earth, that 1.5 to 6 billion people, or 4 to 6 billion people on the African continent are primarily 30 years old and under. Big advantage, time, you can't buy it, okay? So we have the largest population of youth in the world. We have the bulk of the resources concentrated on the equator in the Congo and the 9 surrounding countries. And we have the fastest growing entrepreneur markets, meaning the fastest growing entrepreneurship, intellectual property being produced by young African people. Those are 3 of our advantages, which makes the future sort of like in the palm of the hands of Africa. that being said, we've got to be deliberate and conscious about it. And I think that consciousness is coming, but you have a lot of old guard thinking still in the world that will still sell us to the Western world. It's just as simple as that. That's yes. And look, and then I scroll up and I see Denise's comment. Unfortunately, we still got those same today, fearing of separating from their oppressors. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Denise. You always bring it home. I say that, and she already wrote that. Yes. So some people are sending me their email. I'm not sure. I'm screenshotting it so that I can get it. But okay, so if there's no other questions, thank you. Thank you. Hello from Nigeria, Naja, Moses. Thank you. Sarah, how are you? I see you. Thank you, James Lee. I see you as well. Somebody, can you give the information? So we're about to come to the end of this cycle. Administrators, please post for the people who are not already in the ambassadorship and going through the course officially. Please post how they can join I Love Black People and actually enroll in the Pan-African History and Ideological Development course, which that is what this is. So that they can be part of the next cycle of this seminar. Okay. All right, so they got the troll out. I see that. All right, so I'm going to wrap up here. Yeah, we should have a more secure platform, but then also they want to share some of this information. Yes, Nicole, I agree with you about how color and all of that has been used and the criminalization of us. Okay. All right. So I'm going to wrap up here. I'm hearing like sounds, so sort of my cue. And I'm going to go.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for tuning in. So next week, so we'll have a little dialogue going on in the group, just because I didn't get to some of the other documents, but I will get to them. I'm going to, the next thing I'll be posting is the film, and then the readings also for this week. So don't worry, we're going to hit all of them before we're out of this seminar, before we wrap up. And I think that's it for now. So those of you who are interested in Milka Cabral, this is one of the books that I use that has a collection of all his speeches. Okay, Return to the Source. Very good, because if you notice that we have had one of our readings was in reference to an address he gave to African people in the diaspora about connecting our struggles. So I'm also going to address that too. This dialectical relationship we have had, like we are in that tradition. We've been doing this for more than 100 years. We should never feel like we're doing this for the first time, right? Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up there. I said 100 times I'm gonna wrap up and I didn't, but now I'm going. Have a good day, everyone. Stay safe, okay? I am because we are. Peace.
I am because we are.
Okay, bye-bye.